She had been on camera for nearly 8 years, splitting firewood, running chainsaws, building things, fixing things, standing beside her husband through every season of a rural life that millions of people had quietly fallen in love with. Then, without a formal announcement on the main channel, she launched her own. Her name is Melissa Morgan, and the channel she built with her husband has amassed over 7 million views on a single video about a red oak log going through a sawmill. What she confirmed with one line in a channel description, "I am Melissa Morgan, originally from Outdoors with the Morgans," opens up a story that most of their audience never saw coming. By the time you finish watching this, you will understand not just what changed for Melissa, but why this channel's entire journey from a backyard tractor video in 2016 to a full-scale homestead rebuild in 2026 was always pointing toward exactly this kind of moment. The channel went live on July 25th, 2016. No launch strategy, no filming crew, no carefully considered content calendar. Just a family in a rural setting with a camera and a list of things they needed to get done that week. Early videos covered tractor attachments, firewood tips, water management, and the kind of practical land work that most YouTube channels in 2016 were not interested in covering. The production quality was functional. The subject matter was specific. The audience was slow to arrive, and that turned out to be exactly the right foundation to build on. The early channel did not look like what people would later recognize it as. The numbering system on their videos, episode 20, episode 75, episode 95, told its own story. They were documenting work, not performing it. When the camera rolled, it was because something needed to get done, and they thought someone might find it useful to watch. That is a different creative posture than most people bring to a YouTube channel, and it is almost impossible to fake over time. What the Morgans figured out early, almost by accident, was that specificity beats scale on YouTube when you are willing to wait. A video about moving water with a cheap siphon system does not sound like a hit. That particular video now sits at over 1 million views. A video about the best tractor attachments for gravel driveways sits at nearly 500,000. A video about dangerous tree removal, the kind with a severe lean that most people underestimate, pulled 1.8 million views. A tutorial on cutting firewood to consistent lengths found nearly 500,000 people who needed exactly that information and found no one else explaining it as clearly. These numbers did not arrive overnight. They accumulated over years, driven by an audience of people who work with their hands, own land, operate equipment, and are deeply suspicious of anyone who makes that life look easier than it is. The Morgans never made it look easy. They showed the machine breakdowns, the plans that did not go as planned, the moments where the job took twice as long as expected and cost more than the estimate allowed for. That authenticity was their product before they understood that was what they were selling. And here is what the comments kept asking. And here is the answer they never got, until now. The number that came next, nobody who followed this channel expected it. In September 2019, they uploaded a video titled "Diamond in the Rough," ugly cherry log turned into beautiful lumber. An odd-looking log, the kind most people would leave on the hillside, write off as too knotted, too rough, too much trouble to deal with, went into a Wood-Mizer LX150 sawmill, and came out the other side as something genuinely beautiful. Boards with figure and grain that the raw exterior gave absolutely no indication were hiding inside. The video currently sits at over 2.3 million views. That was not a fluke. A few months later, a red oak log video hit the channel. Same sawmill, same approach, real wood, real process, no shortcuts, no manufactured drama. A log goes in, lumber comes out, and the process between those two moments is the entire point. That video now has 7.7 million views. It remains the single most watched piece of content the Morgans have ever produced. A fact worth sitting with, because it says something about the gap between what a channel thinks it is and what the internet decides to make of it. What the sawmill content accomplished was something that rural YouTube creators spend years trying to manufacture and rarely achieve. It gave the channel a signature. Suddenly, Outdoors with the Morgans was not just a channel about land management and equipment. It was the channel where you watched ordinary logs become extraordinary lumber. The comment sections filled with people who had never operated a chainsaw or stood beside a sawmill, watching because the transformation itself was compelling. Ugly log, beautiful board, rough exterior, hidden value. That metaphor ran deeper than the content, and the audience felt it without being able to explain why. The algorithm responded. The subscriber count grew. Sponsors approached. What had been a documentation of a working rural life became something with genuine commercial weight behind it. But growth on YouTube always asks the same question back. What happens when what made you popular is no longer the whole story? Most people who know this story stop here, but the real story starts right now. In May 2021, a video went up with a title that stopped their usual audience in its tracks. I just walked away from it all. That video pulled 494,000 views. More tellingly, it pulled 27,846 likes and 3,704 comments. Engagement numbers that sit in an entirely different category from the channel's standard content. A steel chainsaw comparison video might pull 10,000 likes. A firewood production record video pulled 16,000. When a rural equipment channel generates nearly 28,000 likes on a single upload, it means something emotionally landed that the usual content cannot reach. The video did not detail a dramatic exit from the channel or the collapse of a business. What it captured was something more personal, a moment of honest reflection about the weight of building something on camera, maintaining it year after year, and what it costs to keep showing up when the life behind the lens has its own demands that do not care about upload schedules. Channels like theirs operate on a particular premise. The work is the content. You show the job, you show the result, you come back next week and show the next job. That cycle works beautifully as long as the work itself stays in front of the person doing it. It becomes harder when the work starts to demand something the camera cannot follow. Rest, recalibration, a conversation that is nobody else's business. The Morgans did not disappear after that video. They kept uploading, the channel kept growing. But the conversation in that comment section, 3,704 people responding to a video far more raw than their usual output, told a story about what their audience actually wanted. It was not just the chainsaws and the sawmill. It was never just the tools. It was the people behind them, and the life those tools were in service of. That understanding would quietly shape every significant decision the channel made over the following 3 years, including the biggest one. And that is when the decision was made, the one nobody around them saw coming. April 28, 2024. The video title was 8 words. We have been keeping a secret. We are out of here. It ran for 38 minutes and 19 seconds. It pulled 534,000 views and generated over 1,100 comments in its first wave of traffic, a response that reflected exactly how personally their audience had invested in the property they had spent years watching the Morgans build. They were leaving. The details of exactly where they were going were revealed gradually across subsequent uploads, which is a content strategy as much as it is a natural storytelling rhythm. But the fact of the departure was unambiguous. The homestead their audience had watched them build, fence by fence, clear acre by acre, mill log by log, and raise a family on, they were leaving it and starting over somewhere new. For a channel built on continuity, video 186, video 264, video 550, a numbering system that ran for years and implied permanence and accumulation, this was a genuine rupture. Their audience had developed a relationship with a specific piece of ground. They knew which trees had been taken down and why. They had watched specific machinery arrive and be deployed against specific problems on specific land. That ground was not just a setting, it was a character in the background of every video ever posted. Now the ground was changing. Rural YouTube channels that relocate do not always survive the transition. The audience that followed because of the place does not automatically transfer loyalty to the people. It is a real risk, and one the Morgans clearly understood going in. They moved anyway. What the audience did not yet understand was that the move was not purely geographic. It was the opening act of a financial and logistical reset that would produce some of the most watched content the channel had ever made. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me because this next part is why the whole story matters. August 4th, 2024. The title was blunt. They repossessed the equipment, and I'm happy about it. The response was not what most creators would expect from that kind of admission. 1.69 million views, a breakout score of 13.81, meaning this video outperformed the channel's typical baseline by nearly 14 times. That figure ranks among the highest the channel has ever recorded outside of the sawmill era, and places the video in the same tier as content that took years to achieve equivalent reach. The video described a chapter in the Morgan story that their subscribers had not been fully inside, a period of equipment financing, the kind of decision that rural operators and small construction businesses make regularly, that had come to its conclusion. The equipment went back. The financing arrangement ended. And rather than frame that as defeat, they framed it as relief. That reframing was the entire story. It resonated because it named a feeling that a significant portion of their audience had experienced personally. Not the specific experience of farm equipment being repossessed, but the broader experience of letting go of a financial obligation that had become heavier than the asset it was tied to. The specific lightness of a decision that had been avoided finally being resolved. The relief of a simpler balance sheet. The comment section filled with people who had been somewhere comparable. Former equipment owners, former business operators, people who had walked away from financing arrangements and recognized the emotional texture of what they were watching. The video explained all of this in the same matter-of-fact tone the channel had used to explain siphon systems and gravel driveways in 2017. No dramatization, no performance of difficulty. That consistency of voice, naming hard things plainly, and moving forward, is what turned what could have been an embarrassing admission into nearly 2 million views. One phone call, one conversation, that is all it took to change the direction of everything. From late 2024 through the first half of 2026, the Morgans documented a full-scale homestead rebuild on a new piece of land, a new barn, framed from scratch. New electrical service, not inexpensive, as one video title pointedly noted. A pool, a major concrete patio pour, excavation work, a fifth-wheel camper pad, new vehicles purchased for the family and for their son Hunter. The content rolled out at multiple uploads per week, and each video consistently averaged between 100,000 and 150,000 views, numbers that represent not just continued relevance, but genuine audience loyalty. The people who had followed the old property followed them to the new one. Hunter became a more visible presence across the 2025 and 2026 content. A June 2026 video titled "Uncomfortable Situation at Lowe's with My Autistic Son" addressed something the channel had not foregrounded before: the reality of raising a child with autism alongside the demands of a major property build and a high-cadence upload schedule. That video generated 561 comments, a response rate well above the channel average for practical build content. The audience reacts differently when a channel stops talking about equipment specifications and starts talking about family realities. The new property build also confirmed something the sawmill era had begun to hint at. This was no longer primarily a rural equipment channel. The equipment and the land were still the visible work, but the audience was not returning for the machinery. They were returning for the Morgans, the people who ran the machinery, made the decisions, and were willing to put the financial and personal difficulty on camera, alongside the firewood and the lumber. The tools had become background, the people had become the point. Here is what the comments kept asking, and here is the answer they never got, until now. Melissa Morgan launched a channel called Morgans Off the Leash. The channel description reads, "Welcome to America's MOTL Life, Morgans Off the Leash YouTube channel. I am Melissa Morgan, originally from Outdoors with the Morgans." That sentence, "originally from Outdoors with the Morgans," is the most direct public statement Melissa has made about her own identity as a creator. It separates her from the channel she helped build, acknowledges where she came from, and positions what she is now building as something with its own direction and its own identity, not an extension of what already existed. The creation date on Morgans Off the Leash is 2011, 5 years before Outdoors with the Morgans launched its first tractor video. Whatever this solo project becomes, the impulse behind it predates the main channel entirely. Melissa was on YouTube before this chapter of the story began. That context shifts how the launch reads. This is not a pivot away from something. It is a return to an instinct that preceded the joint channel by half a decade. What this confirms is something that longtime viewers had been circling in comment sections for years, without quite having language for it. Melissa is not a supporting presence in someone else's content. She is a creator in her own right, with her own voice and her own perspective on the rural life she has been living, building, and documenting for close to a decade. The joint channel gave that a vehicle. Her solo project gives it a direction and a name. The choice to launch without a formal announcement on the main channel, no big reveal, no emotional send-off, no moment of public acknowledgement, is entirely consistent with how this channel has always handled its most significant moves. They do the thing, they let the camera see it, they trust the audience to understand what they are watching without being told how to feel about it. Announcing it loudly would have been a performance. Doing it quietly and letting the channel description speak for itself is exactly the tone Outdoors with the Morgans has operated in for 10 years. At this point in the story, most people walked away. What she did instead is the part nobody talks about. The channel they built together has produced numbers that most rural YouTube creators will never approach. The Red Oak Sawmill video, 7.7 million views. The Cherry Log Transformation, 2.3 million. The Instant Cabin Delivery video, 4.5 million views, with a breakout score of 51.01, outperforming the channel's historical average by more than 50 times. That single video represents the kind of algorithmic event that takes years to create the conditions for, and often cannot be manufactured at all. The Equipment Repossession video, 1.69 million, breakout score of 13.81. A Ford versus GMC comparison from November 2023, 836,000 views, 1,557 comments. A video about discovering 40,000 unfinished Ford Super Duty trucks sitting at a factory, 1.05 million views and 2,450 comments. A Berna Launcher review from October 2025, 770,000 views, breakout score of 8.22. The Secret Relocation reveal in April 2024, 534,000 views, with a comment-to-view ratio well above the channel's average. What those numbers collectively tell you is not simply that the channel is successful. They reveal which categories of content unlock an audience beyond the core subscriber base. Practical skills and physical transformations draw in general YouTube search traffic, people who have never watched the channel looking for specific information. But honesty, financial honesty, personal honesty, the kind that costs something to put on camera, generates a different category of response entirely. The I Just Walked Away video and the Equipment Repossession video are not the channel's most viewed, but in their comment sections, they carry weight that the Sawmill videos cannot match. Melissa's quiet solo channel launch sits in that same category. It is not the loudest thing the Morgans have ever produced. It is probably the most significant. What the Morgans built over nearly a decade is not a YouTube channel about tractors and firewood. It is a long-form record of what it actually takes to pursue a working rural life on camera. The equipment financing, the property decisions, the physical demands across every season, the family realities that eventually find their way into the frame, the financial resets that come with building and operating at scale, and the personal moments that do not fit neatly into a 30-minute build video, but end up being the reason people keep watching. The relocation in 2024. The equipment chapter closing. The new property build running through 2025 and into 2026. Hunter's presence becoming a more central part of the story. And Melissa's solo channel, building quietly in parallel with everything else. These are not separate storylines. They are the same story, told in the only register this channel has ever known. Do the work, let the camera run, and trust the audience to understand what they are watching. What comes next is two creative directions developing alongside each other. The main Outdoors with the Morgans feed continues building on the new property, uploading multiple times per week, consistently pulling six-figure view counts with strong engagement on every upload. Melissa's Morgans Off the Leash project is establishing its own identity, its own audience, and its own chapter in a story that has been accumulating for longer than most YouTube channels survive. Both are active, both are growing. Here is the question worth sitting with. Do you think Melissa was right to build something of her own? Or does a channel like this draw its power from the fact that it always belonged to both of them, and the moment that changes, something fundamental changes with it? Leave your answer below.